the Lowther Estate beaver enclosure today to see what changes the beavers have made to this little landscape, and it is incredible. I've had a sneak peek before making this video and I can't wait to show you. But first of all, we're just going to hear from Jim Bliss, who's going to give us an update of what's been going on, and then we're going to head off on a beaver safari.
Welcome back to the beaver enclosure here at Lowther. We've had a really exciting couple of weeks since you guys were last here. Just behind Heather is actually an amazing new pond network that they've created, and there's now little channels coming out the pond to access this tree which we were actually standing next to last time, and you can see it's now nearly completely felled. But all the channels are coming back up towards this tree to make it easy for them to harvest the wood. We've also got channels going into the field just next to us here, which is spreading water in massive quantities out onto the floodplain. So even in high rainfall events like just this past weekend, we're actually seeing more water stored in our floodplain, which is therefore slowing the flow, reducing the speed going into the main river Lowther, which is really exciting to see. And we're monitoring that with Lancaster Uni. And we're also getting some exciting camera trap footage of them dredging out the river to make it more accessible for them to transport the trees and logs through from these sort of areas, and that's taken back to the lodge to store out the food cache for winter. And I'm sure you'll see later on the new logs that they've just dragged back towards their lodge.
So the last video that you might have seen from us was in early November, which isn't that long ago when you think about it, a month and a half or so. And when we have a look around here, bear that in mind. The changes the beavers have made here have been really quick. So let's start off with the tree that Jim was standing next to. You can see the comparison between last month and this month. They've already worked together to fell this tree, and they've started to chew off the upper branches as well. And they've actually started to drag them across the tiny burn and into their pool as a winter larder. When I was walking around with Jim a little earlier, he dashed off excitedly, so I couldn't wait to see what he had to show me. And it turned out to be this large silver birch that the beavers have quite recently felled. It's just unfortunate for the beavers that it got stuck in some other trees, so they're going to have to get to work coppicing those as well. So it's not just trees that beavers eat, they also eat aquatic and terrestrial vegetation. And around my feet right now, there's a lot of rushes, soft rush, that have been gnawed at a 45-degree angle, or snipped with those incisors. They don't necessarily need to gnaw rush. But the 45-degree angle cut is a kind of marker of beaver foraging. It's also a marker of watervole foraging, but I have my strong suspicion that here it will be beavers. However, beavers have this incredible way of creating more complexity in wetland habitats, and in turn they've found that that actually benefits watervole populations too. So who knows, perhaps in the near future this habitat could actually encourage watervoles too. Okay, so this is where it gets really exciting. You can probably hear all of the squelching as I walk, and that's because the beavers have already started to re-wet this landscape in a very small way, of course, but quite a substantial way given the length of time that they've been here. So if you can see behind me, this is some of the water that's been held back by the dam that they started creating in the summer. Now, when you think back to the November video, the dam was quite short and it was quite shallow as well. But since then, we've had a lot of rain, and the beavers, what beavers need to do is hold back as much water as they can. They're, semi-aquatic mammals. Their lifestyle depends entirely on water. So they want to keep back all of that water as much as they can. So they've raised the height of the dam, but they've extended it as well. And it's really incredible the impact that that has had. Let's go have a closer look. So you can see just how much water is being held back by this small dam. and it's actually flooding out into the floodplain too, which is what the estate have allowed. Of course, dams can actually be managed if needs be, but you can imagine the impact that this might have if beavers were to be free living in managed releases in the future on downstream flooding events. So what's really important about this is that the site have allowed enough space for the water to behave naturally. They've put aside space for the water to actually stay in the landscape. And by doing that, it's reduced, or we anticipate that it might reduce the amount of water that flows downstream because it's been held back. You can probably hear me splodging along. So it's not only being held back in the beaver pools, it's actually being held back in this floodplain as well. And the University of Lancaster are assessing the impacts that that has on the floodplain itself. So the water heads all the way down there, and you can just see a couple of beaver runs heading into the wetter areas as well. Okay, so this is super exciting. When I was last stood in this exact spot, I was explaining that they were creating little runs through this area that I suspected they might start to canal because it looked like a good spot to access more food. So they've not only gone ahead and started to do that, digging it out and re-wetting this whole area, they've also created another little dam. You can see how it's all packed and pushed up with mud, and they're just starting to bring a few sticks in to reinforce it. So that's helping to keep more water in the woodland that you can see there. But also further downstream, just where the sun is in fact, they've created another little dam, and that's helping as well to keep water back in the woodland. How great is that? It has been absolutely incredible to come back here at Lowther and see the impacts that the two beavers have had in the past month. They've created more dams, they're holding more water back in the landscape, they're flushing it out onto the floodplain, and they've created more wet woodland. Wetland habitat, it's so important, and it's going to benefit a huge diversity of species come spring. And I can't wait to get back in spring and show you what has happened. If you want to keep up to date with what we're doing, follow us on Twitter at Cumbria Beavers, or get in touch with us at info@cumbriabeavers.org.uk, and we'd love to chat. Otherwise, we'll see you in the spring.